Thank you very much. Melania is terrific. She was here last night. We had dinner with Senator Rubio and his wife, who was, by the way, lovely. And we had a really good discussion about Cuba, because we have very similar views on Cuba. And Cuba was very good to me in the Florida election, as you know, the Cuban people, Americans. And I think that Melania is going to be outstanding. That's right. She just opened up the visitor center, in other words, touring of the White House. She, like others that she's working with, feel very, very strongly about women's issues, women's difficulties, very, very strongly. And she's a very, very strong advocate. I think she's a great representative for this country. And a funny thing happens because she gets so unfairly maligned. The things they say. I've known her for a long time. She was a very successful person. She was a very successful model. She did really well. She would go home at night and didn't even want to go out with people. She was a very private person. She was always the highest quality that you'll ever find. And the things they say, and I've known her for a long time, the things they say are so unfair. And actually, she's been apologized to, as you know, by various media, because they said things that were lies. I just tell you this, I think she's going to be a fantastic First Lady. She's going to be a tremendous representative of women and of the people. And helping her and working her will be Ivanka, who is a fabulous person and a fabulous, fabulous woman. And they're not doing this for money. They're not doing this for pay. They're doing this because they feel it, both of them. And Melania goes back and forth. And after Barron finishes school, because it's hard to take a child out of school with a few months left, she and Barron will be moving over to the White House. Okay? Thank you. It's a very nice question. Go ahead. Yes. I know this is going to be a bad question, but that's okay. Good, because I enjoy watching you on television. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. Mr. President, I need to find out from you. You said something as it relates to inner cities. That was one of your platforms during your campaign. Now
Fix the inner cities. Yeah?
Fixing the inner cities. What will be that fix and your urban agenda, as well as your HBCU executive order that's coming out this afternoon? Now, see, it wasn't bad, was it?
That was very professional and very good. Yeah,
we'll
be announcing the order in a little while, and I'd rather let the order speak for itself, but it'll be something I think that will be very good for everybody concerned. But we'll talk to you about that after we do the announcement. As far as the inner cities, as you know, I was very strong on the inner cities during the campaign. I think it's probably what got me a much higher percentage of the African-American vote than a lot of people thought I was going to get. We did, much higher than people thought I was going to get, and I was honored by that, including the Hispanic vote, which was also much higher. And, by the way, if I might add, including the women's vote, which was much higher than people thought I was going to get. So we are going to be working very hard on the inner cities, having to do with education, having to do with crime. We're going to try and fix as quickly as possible. It takes a long time. It's taken 100 years and more for some of these places to evolve, and they evolved, many of them, very badly. But we're going to be working very hard on health and health care, very, very hard on education, and also we're going to be working in a stringent way and a very good way on crime. You go to some of these inner city places, and it's so sad when you look at the crime. You have people, and I've seen this, and I've sort of witnessed it. In fact, in 2 cases I have actually witnessed it. They lock themselves into apartments, petrified to even leave in the middle of the day. They're living in hell. We can't let that happen. So we're going to be very, very strong. It's a great question, and it's a very difficult situation because it's been many, many years. It's been festering for many, many years. But we have places in this country that we have to fix. We have to help African American people that, for the most part, are stuck there, Hispanic American people. We have Hispanic American people that are in the inner cities, and they're living in hell. I mean, you look at the numbers in Chicago. There are 2 Chicagos, as you know. There's one Chicago that's incredible, luxurious, and all, and safe. There's another Chicago that's worse than almost any of the places in the Middle East that we talk about and that you talk about every night on the newscasts. So we're going to do a lot of work on the inner cities. I have great people lined up to help with the inner cities.
Well, when you say the inner cities, are you going to include the CBC, Mr. President, in your conversations with your urban agenda, your inner city agenda, as well as?
Am I going to include?
Are you going to include the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional
Well,
Hispanic
I would.
Caucus,
I tell you what. Do you want to set up the meeting? Do you want to set up the meeting?
No.
Are they friends of yours?
I'm just a reporter.
No, set up the meeting.
I know some of them, but I'm sure.
Let's go. Set up a meeting. I would love to meet with the Black Caucus. I think it's great. The Congressional Black Caucus. I think it's great. I actually thought I had a meeting with Congressman Cummings, and he was all excited. And then he said, "Oh, I can't move. It might be bad for me politically. I can't have that meeting." I was all set to have the meeting. You know, we called him, and he was all set. I spoke to him on the phone. Very nice guy.
I hear he wanted that meeting with you as well.
He wanted it, but we called. They can't make a meeting with him. Every day I walk in, I said, I would like to meet with him because I do want to solve the problem. But he probably was told by Schumer or somebody like that, some other lightweight, he was probably told, don't meet with Trump. It's bad politics. And that's part of the problem in this country. Okay, one more. Go ahead.
Yes, President, two questions.
No, one question. Two we can't handle. This one can't handle. Go ahead. Give me the better of your two.
I'll follow up on my colleague's question about anti-Semitism. It's not about your personality or your beliefs. We're talking about a rise in anti-Semitism around the country, some of it by supporters in your name. What can you do?
And some of it, and can I be honest with you? And this has to do with racism and horrible things that are put out. Some of it written by our opponents. You do know that. Do you understand that? You don't think anybody would do a thing like that. Some of the signs you'll see are not put up by the people that love or like Donald Trump. They're put up by the other side. And you think it's like playing it straight? No. But you have some of those signs, and some of that anger is caused by the other side. They'll do signs and they'll do drawings that are inappropriate. It won't be my people. It will be the people on the other side to anger people like you. Okay. Go ahead.
Now, what are you going to do about it?
Who's that? Where is that?
What are you going to do about?
You can-
What are you going to do about the tensions that have been
I'm working
discussed?
on it.
Are
No,
you
I'm working
going
on
to
it
give
very
a
hard. No, no.
speech?
Look, hey, just so you understand, we had a totally divided country for 8 years, and long before that, in all fairness to President Obama, long before President Obama, we have had a very divided. I didn't come along and divide this country. This country was seriously divided before I got here. We're going to work on it very hard. One of the questions that was asked, I thought was a very good question, was about the inner cities. I mean, that's part of it. But we're going to work on education. We're going to work on we're going to try and stop the crime. We have great law enforcement officials. We're going to try and stop crime. We're not going to try and stop. We're going to stop crime. But it's very important to me. But this isn't Donald Trump that divided a nation. We went 8 years with President Obama, and we went many years before President Obama. We lived in a divided nation. And I am going to try. I will do everything within my power to fix that. I want to thank everybody very much. It's a great honor to be with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
President Trump concluding about an hour and 10-minute long session with reporters in the East Room today, continuing his attacks on what he considers unfair media coverage. A lot of pent-up questions, certainly over reporting about Russia, reporting about General Flynn, who the president acknowledged he fired for giving false information to the vice president. It was contentious. It was ugly at moments, and we haven't seen anything like it. Let's bring in right now moderator of Meet the Press and our political director, Chuck Todd. Chuck, give me your thoughts.
Look, this is a president that appears to be in a bunker mentality right now, whatever that is. And look, this was a strategic decision. Very explainable at a time when a lot of people are questioning what's happening in this White House. Do they have command and control of this situation? You have Capitol Hill Republicans that are starting to get more comfortable criticizing this administration, getting nervous about the Russia story, comfortable dumping on some of his cabinet picks. So the point of today, before this presser unfolded, Lester, was to try to offer some reassurance, at least to party leaders, reassurance to Capitol Hill. I don't think his performance today is going to reassure those skeptical Republicans in Capitol Hill that are getting more nervous by the day. His Russia answers, at times, he was twisting himself into a pretzel in not answering both the substance and the charge of and the questions that had to do during the campaign on Russian interference in the election, but also just an odd rationale when he was asked by our colleague over at CBS, Major Garrett, about some of the actions that the Russians have taken that have been aggressive and somewhat antagonistic of the United States. And he just sort of had this weird explanation about, well, what Putin may be thinking right now. So if this press conference was intended to calm the waters, I think it did the exact opposite. I was hearing during this press conference from some Republicans, from some folks on Capitol Hill just shaking their head going, what is he doing? What is he saying? Those were among the types of reactions that I was getting in real time watching this thing.
And Chuck, let me go to Kristen Welker right now. She's there in the front row of this news conference. Kristen, I noted that there were a lot of pent-up questions. This was the first solo news conference, the first chance that a broad range of reporters have had to question him. Describe what the atmosphere, what it was like to be in that room. Those of us, many of us watching on TV, were certainly squirming. What was it like to be there?
Well, I think you're right. Pent up is a good word to describe all of the questions that I and so many of my colleagues had here. And I think that really added to the tense nature of this press conference. I think the president did get on the record and was pressed on a number of key questions. Number one, why did it take him 15 days to tell his vice president about Mike Flynn and the nature of his conversations with the Russian ambassador? He said because he didn't think it was a problem that he had been discussing sanctions with the Russian ambassador prior to the inauguration. I asked him point blank, did he direct Mike Flynn to discuss sanctions with the Russian ambassador? He said he did not. He indicated he would have let him go regardless. But this is the first time we really heard the president say that he asked for Mike Flynn's resignation, and he asked for it, he said, because he misled his vice president. But going back to Chuck's point, he really struggled to answer a number of questions about what type of contact his former campaign aides may or may not have had with Russian officials. And as you just saw, Lester, that got a lot of attention during this press conference. So that's going to be an ongoing issue for this president. Also notable that the bulk of the questions were about Russia, but then there at the end, you saw a real focus on the tensions that exist in this country and that have been bubbling up in the wake of the 2016 race. At the very end of the press conference, I pressed him on that as well. He vowed to take action, but didn't get very specific about what he plans to do to address that problem. Lester.
The president clearly reporting he doesn't like, quick to call out, and one of the points he wanted to make was that this White House has been described by some as unstable, is anything but. Let me play a portion of what the president said on that subject.
I turn on the TV, open the newspapers, and I see stories of chaos. Chaos. Yet it is the exact opposite. This administration is running like a fine-tuned machine.
Chuck Todd, you've been talking to a lot of sources. Well, what's the reaction to that statement?
Well, look, I mean, it doesn't match what everybody in their interworkings and their dealings with it. But let's look. A lot of this press conference had to do with the president airing grievances about the press, and we got to remember what this is. It's a political tactic. It's one that is a familiar one, but he is going at it in a way we haven't seen a president do since Nixon in those early 70s days. But this is a tactic he kept bringing up Hillary Clinton. I think he misses running against her. And if he can't run against her, he wants all the bad stories to be grouped into the country's collective anger at some member of the press corps. So that is, to me, was a defensive mechanism that he was trying to do. And it can rally his own troops for a while. Blaming the press is a popular thing among some in the conservative base. But to do it almost on every answer over time, it's not playing well on Capitol Hill at all. And over time, it's going to start hurting him with sort of the skeptical voters that he got. People that weren't big fans of him but voted for him anyway, they'll be the first ones to leave if he continues to do this.
Yeah, the first part of this news